Welcome to Talking Point Live. We're coming to you from the lobby of the Holland Building here at Dixie State University. And I'm Jennifer Kohler, and this is my guest, Henry Walton. And the date today is March 29th, I think.
I believe.
Yeah, springtime. And so we are going to be talking with Henry today, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself a little bit and then tell us about his role here on campus with our new Institute of Politics and Public Affairs. So Henry, tell me a little bit about your role here on the Dixie State University campus.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on, Jennifer. I started at Dixie. It's been about a year and a half now. And when I was initially hired, I was hired to do government relations work. Essentially, I function as a lobbyist for the university. My boss and I, Frank Loyko, work closely with the state government, the federal government, and a variety of community officials to make sure that the university is working together with local government, state government, and specifically the state legislature, making sure that the dollars keep flowing and things like that, making sure that policies enacted are those that we like. But another thing that I quickly began to dabble in after arriving at the university was developing some sort of center or institute for politics on our campus. I had studied at a couple other institutions in Utah and had really got involved in politics and found my passion for it through these centers for politics that, just create opportunities for students to get involved, to learn about the issues, do internships and things like that. And I realized quickly that Dixie was the only university in the state that didn't have something like this yet. So it was a really good opportunity for me to get to know a lot of different stakeholders on campus and in the community and begin to build this institute. It took a lot of time, but we're on the right track.
Well, so it's called officially the Institute of Politics and Public Affairs.
That's right.
And you have a advisory board.
We do.
And then you have student. It's actually is run by student government, is it?
It is.
Okay.
It's a student-run organization, and we set it up that way on purpose. We wanted to make sure that students were engaged and understood that this was something that they could be a part of. So there are a couple different levels of governance, so to speak, but the students run the show, and it's housed in the Student Government Association here on campus. We pay several students in scholarship stipends to work with the Institute. We have a student director who kind of oversees all operations and things like that.
And who's your director this year?
His name's James Keener.
Mm-hmm.
He's become a good friend of mine. He's an English major, senior, and he's preparing to go to law school. And he's done an excellent job of building this.
Now, does he have a replacement for next year yet?
So right now we're actually in the process of finding one. Applications close tomorrow, and we'll begin doing interviews next week and go from there.
Well, if a student was interested in applying before midnight tomorrow,
yes.
right? What kind of qualifications or what are you looking for as far as your director, your student director?
Well, a variety of things. First and foremost, an interest in politics. It's important that students that want to get involved in this and want to be an ambassador to the political world on campus can understand these issues and be able to connect with students on these issues. James has been fantastic because he's an everyman. He's been able to really connect with students and show them the importance of politics. We do pizza and politics lectures, for example, and he's done such a great job of making sure that students understand the value in those and making sure that students don't feel, oftentimes in politics, we bring in these suits and they talk about policy and they talk about things that are well above millennials' heads, and James does an awesome job of bridging the gap between politics and millennials.
Well, so you bring up millennials, and it's often been said that they're thinking about other things and they're disengaged from the political process. What's your first-hand perception of that?
Well, I think, first of all, I think that that's true to an extent. I think that they are disengaged. I think that they're disengaged not for the reasons that we often think that they are. One thing that's so frustrating to me is, and I am a millennial, so maybe that's why it's frustrating, is it's a personal affront, is that millennials get they get painted as being disengaged just because they don't want to be engaged, and because they're playing with their phone and they're doing other things. We get called the me generation, the now generation, things like that. I think in politics in particular, I think there are some other reasons that have caused millennials to say, hang on, this isn't working for me, and I'm not sure I want to be involved in this. And all we have to do is turn on CNN or Fox News and to see what those reasons are. I mean, our political climate right now it's not particularly friendly or attractive. And I think millennials have a pretty grand vision for where they'd like to see the world going. And when they see the political climate as partisan and as problematic as it is, it's oftentimes something that scares them and makes them feel uncomfortable and frustrates them. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty easy to disengage when you're feeling those sorts of emotions.
Well, and I find myself, you mentioned two cable networks as opposed to, to broadband or to network, mm-hmm. CBS, NBC, mm-hmm. ABC News, for mm-hmm. example. And so I do think, we've talked about media bias and the effect of media on our political mm-hmm. conversations. And I do think that there are probably places millennials could go, and most of us could go, where we might feel a little less impotent, mm-hmm. a little less frustrated
Certainly.
With the discourse, and get something more intelligent mm-hmm. and more helpful for decision making. Mm-hmm. So I do think that your generation is more media savvy than my generation, because you're constantly faced with decisions. Mm-hmm. So when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of choices. You watched what was on the TV,
yeah.
and that was it. And you guys have grown up now having to constantly make decisions mm-hmm. about what kind of media mm-hmm. to take in, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there are ways for your generation to probably be a little bit less
yeah.
frustrated.
Twitter's a good example of that. So I don't use Twitter for maybe the same reasons that a lot of millennials do. I use it for news. And so I pop on Twitter every morning and see a smattering of tweets from reporters and politicians and different people, and it's really easy to be selective about what it is you want to hear.
You just follow certain people.
Exactly. Now that can be a good thing or a bad thing if you're selective in the right way, and you make sure that you listen to a variety of reporters from different organizations and a variety of politicians from different parties. You get a really even smattering of viewpoints. Otherwise, if you're a real conservative Republican or a real liberal Democrat, it's pretty easy to focus on MSNBC or Fox News on the right, and to get into your own individual echo chamber. And that's the problem that we see so much of, is folks don't search out opposing viewpoints.
Right, know thy enemy at least, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at least for the sake of having some ammunition.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly,
yeah.
and we just don't have enough of that anymore, and it's really damaging to our political culture.
Well, so you mentioned your director, mm-hmm. James Keener, this year. What
mm-hmm.
other positions do you have for staffing the Institute of Politics?
So the way the Institute of Politics is set up right now is we have a student director who works anywhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 hours a week, and they're compensated for that. Mm-hmm. We have a couple of events coordinators, and then we have an internship coordinator. And those are all overseen by the student body president. So another thing that I'd love to tell you a little bit about is internships. Something that we do a lot of at the Institute of Politics is matching students up, and they don't necessarily have to be interested in politics, but business students, communication students, English students, a variety of different students with public policy internships in the community, at the state level, and even back in Washington, D.C.
Well, I was telling my students this year, I said, you guys are nuts if you don't apply to the internships this year. If I were single, I was your age, I would really, really want to do that. Yeah. And so what internships specifically have you been working on filling for this year?
Yeah, so I tell students there's three different types of internships, or at least three geographic locations that we can do internships. You've got right here in St. George, there's a variety of opportunities. So Congressman Stewart, Senator Lee, and Senator Hatch all have local offices, Southern Utah offices right here in St. George. They've got 1 or 2 staffers there, so students can work in those offices and get really hands-on experience on a variety of local issues. The example I always use is the public lands, BLM, Department of Interior. There are a lot of ranchers in southern Utah who feel like they're being slighted by the federal government, and sometimes for good reason. And those are the issues that students, if they wanted to get involved here in southern Utah, would have a chance to work on. Then you move to Salt Lake City, and there's a variety of opportunities there. A couple of those are the state legislature internship, which just finished up. That runs from about January to March every year.
So so they would move up to Salt Lake to do that for 6
That's
to 8
right.
weeks.
That's
probably?
right. It's 7 weeks. It's a 7-week internship. It's well paid, and we'll be able to help students with housing when they come up there.
And can they continue to do their other coursework?
They can. So
Okay.
we've worked out a way that students are able to enroll in about 6 internship credits, maybe more, and then typically what they do is take an online course or two, and that way they can maintain their scholarships and maintain the 12 credit threshold that they need to meet. But that legislative internship is so great. I mean, I just came back from the legislative session, and we had a Dixie intern working with one of our local representatives who happened to be in budget leadership.
Okay, and which one was that?
So his name was Joe Nelson. He's a communications
I
student.
know Joe. And which office was he in?
So he worked with Brad Last, Representative Last, and Representative Last was in leadership this year again, so he got to help put together the budget, which was enormously helpful to us this year because we were asking for a variety of different appropriations, especially the Human Performance Center. So Joe got to really get involved in the funding of the state budget. It's a $16 billion budget that the legislators dole out over the course of a couple of weeks at the end of the legislative session. It's high stakes, it's exciting, and Joe got to be right involved in it. I mean, he got to make decisions.
Gosh.
So it's a really awesome opportunity for students, and we always have slots available, and I did it a few years ago, and so this is probably my favorite internship opportunity that we offer.
Okay, so there's the one here where you stay in town, then the one in Salt Lake that's 7 weeks long.
That's right.
Okay, and then what other ones do you have?
So probably the sexiest ones, the ones that you hear the most about, are Washington D.C. internships.
Okay.
And these are opportunities where you get to go back, move to the nation's capital, and work for a Utah congressman or senator.
And does
in
that
their
last the
office.
whole semester?
So those last the whole semester. So they're available on a rolling basis. Any semester, including summer, those are available. And those are great opportunities if you want to go back to Washington, D.C., you want to travel a little bit, and you want to see how the nation's politics works or doesn't work.
How the sausage gets made.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I was able to do one of those internships several years ago. The experience in Washington, D.C. is a little less personal than it is in Salt Lake.
Like, in what way?
Well, in Salt Lake, you're working with 1 or 2 elected representatives, and you are their only staff. So you get a front row seat to everything. In Washington, D.C., say you're working for Senator Hatch or Senator Lee, they have a staff of 25 or 30 staffers. And so you are...
Plus interns on top of that.
Plus interns, plus 5 or 6 interns on top of that. So you're a smaller cog in the wheel in that operation. Still a very important one, and I get calls from Senator Hatch and Senator Lee's office saying, please send us more interns. We need your interns.
When you're looking for interns, when you go through those applications, what are you looking for?
A couple of things.
And when you do the interviews, right?
That's a great question. The first thing we look for is someone who knows how to write.
How to write. Okay.
Internship coordinators tell us over and over again that the most important skill the interns can have is communication skills, both oral and written. So we start with written, and we ask for a writing sample and things like that. And if a student knows how to write well and can write simply and concisely and get to the point, that's a huge advantage to them.
I'm forever telling my students, you want your written work to reflect your college education. A lot of times in speaking, they're very articulate, but their writing lags behind.
Yeah.
So that's a skill to work on then.
Absolutely.
If you aspire to an internship, is your writing skills. Okay, good.
Totally critical. The other thing is oral communication, and I think our students are pretty good there for the most part. But that writing, again, it can be tough for students, and I think at least what I've seen is students come from high school and they're not prepared to write in a college atmosphere. So that's something that we're continually working with them on. But if you're interested, come talk to me. Give me a call or send me an email. And I work with a variety of students each semester. In fact, I've been meeting with several students this week. They bring me their application and I help them make it better.
Oh, that's a wonderful opportunity for people. And think about it, because it's like applying for a job or for graduate school. So
Yeah.
the more help you get in presenting yourself on paper, it's just going to help you get a job, a good job, and get paid more.
Exactly.
Or into a good school for your graduate work. So that's a really great. And then also, I remember in our advisory board meeting, I should say that I'm on the advisory board, so that that's out there. I remember too. One of our state representatives was saying also, not only that your written communication and your verbal, but your nonverbal in the way you dress and present yourself.
Absolutely.
Matters.
It does. So let me talk about the state legislature internship a little bit more. There's a week-long preparation course just for that internship. We get together with all the other universities and we talk about every little thing that matters during that internship. And they spend a few hours talking about how you ought to be groomed and how you ought to be dressed, when it's absolutely necessary to wear a suit coat for the guys, and there's certain times where you need to do certain things, and certain times where dressing up too much is a problem. But it's very important, and unfortunately it's the world we live in where you've got to be presentable, and if you're not quite right, it can be an immediate strike against you.
It is a form of communication, the way you dress,
Absolutely.
and the way you carry yourself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, being in the communication department, we're big on that.
You know a thing or two about that, yeah.
That's our big focus. Okay, well, so anything else you wanted to say about this current legislative session and your first year here at the Institute? How did things go so far?
Things are going really well. In fact, I'm probably on a little bit of a high right now. We just got back from the legislative session, and we were fortunate with the help of our legislators to receive funding for the Human Performance Center.
Can you say a little bit about that for people who don't know
absolutely.
about it? Yeah.
So the Human Performance Center is a capital facilities, a buildings request that we've been working on. I haven't been working on personally because I haven't been here this long, but for 5 or 6 years now the university has been going to the legislature and asking for this building, asking for the legislature to fund this building. What it is it's a PE building, hybrid, mixed with a variety of science classes and human performance oriented classes. So when this building is built, and the legislature funded it this year, there will be a 50-meter swimming pool, a rock climbing wall, a track, a gym, and a student union, essentially. But in addition to that, there will be a variety of labs and classrooms in that building. So we'll house our PA program there, our occupational therapy program, our exercise science program, bioinformatics. The whole direction of the university right now is trending towards these science and health related degrees, and a lot of those degrees will be housed in this building.
So we have a good family friend who is a personal trainer for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Wow.
Before he did that, he was U.S. ski team trainer,
Okay.
and he's from Australia, and I understand that the Australians are like top notch in this science. Have you heard that at all about
I
the
don't
Australians?
know a lot about that.
They are like on the cutting edge of,
No kidding.
and so they are very sought after. So
Wow.
I just think maybe we'll have a few Aussies on the campus once we get up and running.
There you
Do
go.
we have a location for the building yet?
We do. In fact, it's
Yeah.
going to be right out this window, over my
Okay.
right shoulder. It's going
Okay.
to go in front of the Student Activities Center.
Okay.
So it'll fill up that entire parking lot. If you look right out here behind us, the tennis courts are going to be relocated.
Okay.
So this parking lot will extend out, and the tennis courts will become a parking lot, and then the parking lot to the north by the Student Activities Center will be where the Human Performance Center is located.
Any idea how many square feet are in this big building?
Yeah, it's a big building. It's 150,000 square feet. It's about the size of the building we're in right now, the Holland building.
Okay, about the same height as well, or?
That's a good question. The footprint's going to be a little bit bigger.
Okay.
It won't be quite as many floors, but the swimming pool, for example, will take up almost the entire first floor, and it's a big 50-meter Olympic swimming pool. So that's something that'll take up quite a bit of space.
That's exciting. And do we have a groundbreaking date yet for this?
We don't yet, and I probably shouldn't say too much, but
Okay.
hopefully before the end of the year.
Oh, that would
so
be
soon.
soon.
And it's-
Because we are getting down to I think we're week 12 now of a 16. So when you mean the calendar year, you don't mean
Correct.
the school year. Okay.
Correct. So not the school year.
Hopefully sometime between now and Christmas.
Yes, so
Okay.
it should happen probably late fall or early winter at the end of this year.
Okay. Well, so how was it? How was your startup experience gone with the Institute of politics and public affairs this first year.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Really well, surprisingly well. I'm thrilled. We started at a really good time. It happened to be 2016. Donald Trump happened to be running for president against Hillary Clinton, and there was a lot to talk about. So we hosted a variety of pizza and politics forums, local debates, national debate watching parties, things like that.
I remember I was at the Gardner Building where you have
Yes.
pizza and politics the night of the election.
Yeah.
And you had two monitors. You had
did.
one monitor following, maybe it was Fox,
Probably
and another one
Fox.
following CNN,
I-
maybe. And
yeah.
they were like right next to each other,
Uh-huh.
and so I could watch both reactions simultaneously.
And they were quite different.
They were.
Yes, but that evening is
Yeah.
a perfect example, and I think it, if I think that a lot of us who didn't think Donald Trump had as strong of a chance as he did probably could have learned something from the crowd that showed up that night, because there were a lot of people who hadn't been voting previously who turned out to vote this year, and we benefited from that on campus. We had so much interest in a lot of these events that we did. People are frustrated, people are angry, people are interested, and as much as we talk about millennial disengagement, this cycle was a little bit different, and so it presented a super great opportunity for us to build the Institute out and to make sure that everyone knew about what we were doing and how we were trying to get the word out about politics and the election cycle.
So we have one more pizza and politics, and they're at noon on the Thursdays.
They're right. So essentially every other Thursday at noon.
Twice a month then.
Twice a month in the Gardner Center. And
when's our last one for the year?
So we're going to take a week off next week for D Week, and then on April 19th we've got Congressman Chris Stewart coming to speak. There's been a lot of talk in the news recently about Russia and whether or not they influenced the recent presidential election. We've asked Congressman Stewart to talk a little bit about that. Congressman Stewart has risen through the ranks quickly in Washington, D.C., and he's doing great things for Utah.
One of the House Intelligence Committee.
One of those
right?
things
Yeah.
is the House Intelligence Committee.
Yeah.
So he's got a first-hand seat into, a first-hand look into the investigation of Russia and their meddling in the election, and whether or not that happened and whether or not there was an influence there. So
I just read this morning that one Republican has come out now and suggested that Nunez maybe recuse himself from that investigation.
yes, so there's been quite a bit of interesting talk about that. It's a tough thing because Republicans control this committee, but they also control the White House, and there's been some suggestions that the White House may be implicated. Or at least talking to certain Russian sources, things like that. Anyway, it's very murky right now, and we don't have a lot of details, but everyone agrees that we need to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again in terms of Russian meddling in our election process.
I know we don't like it, but my perception is that that's the way it's always been, that countries always meddle in one another's business, looking out for their own interests. And there's ways of meddling. Radio Free Europe, for example, you could call that a form of meddling.
Of course.
You could call any attempts to fund or candidates a form of meddling for sure. Outside money, foreign money. So yes, we don't like it, but I can't really, I'm just thinking that's just a fact of life to a certain degree. The other thing that comes up for me about that is, like, for example, how the emails regarding the DNC came to light and caused problems for the DNC in the fall, right? And the Clinton campaign. If the content is true, I don't really care who the messenger is.
And that's an interesting perspective, because a lot of folks, particularly in the Democratic Party, thought that journalists were writing too much about this, right? They were writing too much.
They were covering the leaks too much.
Yeah, and it certainly Clinton staffers felt that way for obvious reasons. But
why do you guys have to make such a big deal out of it?
The question is, at what point do you take illegally obtained material and say this was illegally obtained, we shouldn't be reporting about it, and what you're saying is we ought to report about it, this is news.
Yeah, well, and I have to say too, there's sometimes things that are illegal to do that are ethical to do. So that's a tough one. because, you know, the thing with leaking has been, it just continues to be an issue. I mean,
and it's become an issue. It was an issue for Hillary during the campaign. It's become an issue for President Trump now.
Right, and it was an issue for President Obama with Edward Snowden and other leaks that were happening. So, as a matter of fact, we talked about on one of our shows not too long ago that President Jefferson, well, he was the, he was Secretary of State under, I guess,
George Washington.
Yes, and he didn't like Alexander Hamilton
at all
using Treasury money to produce a paper. So Jefferson decided he was going to take Treasury money and produce a paper too, and get his side out there. And he apparently left the door to his office unlocked and told the editor when he could go in there and where the classified documents could be found. And the editor could go, and this is according to Brooke Gladstone, who wrote The Influencing Machine on the media, right? So leaking, I was just making the point, it has a time-honored, it has a place in democracy to a certain degree. So it's tricky.
It is.
Because you take a lot of risks sometimes, but I kind of believe in the digital age, there are very few secrets that stay secret.
Well, it's really tough to keep certain things secret, and our national security agencies are doing everything they can to reverse that trend. But it's tough. You know, it's really tough.
So when Congressman Stewart is here on the 19th, you said, right?
19th of April, yep.
What's he going to be talking about? Do we have any idea?
So what we've asked him to talk about is specifically these issues, national security and his role on the Intelligence Committee. A variety of different investigations they're conducting, the Russia issue in particular. So I think what he'll end up doing is giving kind of a brief overview and then opening it up to questions. So if we've got anyone who'd like to come ask Congressman Stewart about some of these issues, please do. Please come out.
Okay. So we'll have students there, and it's from noon until 1.
Noon until 1 in the Gardner Center.
Okay.
Yep.
And pizza for students.
Always pizza for students.
I told my husband, I said, don't eat any of their pizza. They're hungry, starving students.
You know, I see people, I see students every week. They say, you need more pizza. You need more. I say, we can always have more pizza. We'll never reach a threshold where we have enough pizza. But Pizza Factory's been really good to us. They donate the pizza.
Oh, that's really nice.
And we try and have enough for everybody to have at least a couple slices, and then sit down and hopefully they don't just grab their pizza and dart. Hopefully they stay and listen to the message a little bit.
Well, I heard at a town hall Congressman Stewart, and then a couple of other occasions, and I do appreciate his willingness to engage in conversations that are kind of tricky, and I've always felt he was respectful to the audience members, even when, you know, it must be kind of tough for him because he's got a lot of information we don't have. And so, in a way, you know, he's kind of dealing with people that are ignorant on some level through no fault of their own.
Yeah, at least in
that's
comparison
just the way
to what
it
he
is.
knows.
Yeah, compared to what he knows. And I always felt he's been generous with his interests that way.
Congressman Stewart's a gentleman. I've seen him. I remember one instance in particular at SUU. A young lady approached him during a meeting and was quite accusational, and he just handled it so well. He said, listen, we disagree on this. This is my stance. This is why my stance is this way. And if you'd like to talk more about this, please come find me later. And he's been really good about engaging with his constituents on both sides of the political spectrum.
So you're excited about your first year and the internships. Any ideas for going forward, some goals or some things you're hoping to see happen with your Institute of Politics?
Yeah, we hope that it grows, first and foremost. The internships, we've sent 7 or 8 students off this year alone. We'd like to double that next year and send a variety of more students out to Washington, D.C., to Salt Lake and here.
So what's the capacity? I mean, and then you said some of them are not necessarily going to be political orientation. So is there a large capacity for internships when our program gets fleshed out?
Absolutely. So I get calls again almost weekly from the local offices in particular saying we need more interns, we need more students. They don't have to be political science majors, they can come from a variety of different backgrounds, but we need students to help us out. So there's plenty of opportunity to get involved.
Great. Well, let's see. anything else you wanted to say before we're finished?
I really appreciate you bringing me on. I've loved my time here at Dixie, and this Institute of Politics it's working out great. We've got lots of room to grow. If you'd like to get involved, shoot me an email. My email is walton@dixie.edu, and I'd be happy to get you involved or talk to you in any way that I can.
Thanks. Thanks for being with us, Henry.
Absolutely.
Goodbye from Talking Point Live.